Welcome everybody to another episode of the In the Paint Show, presented by Ball is Live. Ronnie Flores here with my co-host Ani Umana. Ani, how you doing, man? Are you okay? Back from the Final Four? You got back in one piece? Not, everything okay?
Yeah, everything's good, man. Wednesday, Thursday, basically till Sunday. I mean, I had a detox, from the drinking and everything, but I'm back safe. We got to link up a little bit, so it was all good.
For sure, yeah, that's the main thing. I'm glad you made it back home. I mean, it was a long weekend for a lot of people, and for some people, it's very long because the Southwest and JetBlue and a few other airlines had like mass cancellations. I don't know if they mentioned it was weather related, then other people are saying no, it's computer related and like related to software and flights. And I know a lot of people were stuck longer there in the Crescent City in New Orleans, longer than they wanted to be. But so hopefully everybody made it back by the time they listen to this. This is
glad you made it back. I got to drive.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you and Branch were able to drive. My guy Alan Branch, just roll out whenever you want. But a lot of people were, they're longer than they want to. And again, it ain't cheap to stay in a hotel that you didn't budget for another 2 or 3 days. Same thing happened with GEICO Nationals, or people who went down there to Florida. They had the same problem with some cancellations, and hopefully they all got home. Obviously, Montverde Academy won GEICO for the second straight year. We'll talk a little bit about that and what that meant for the rankings, the high school rankings. But this is a very important episode, as I mentioned, because of what we found out and what we talked about and what people were talking about down in the Final Four. Why don't you tell them what people were mostly talking about in terms of coaches, just the landscape, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of movement. Obviously Talvin Hester got the job at La Tech. So, Final Four, people don't know, is you got a lot of young guys or guys that are trying to get jobs. So, like Talvin getting the job at La Tech, Rob Lanier getting the job at SMU, seeing what he's going to do.
Movement,
Georgia with Mike White, guys just trying to figure out, hey, Evansville, is there opening there? Do I have a chance there? ECU, there's so much movement. There's so many guys that are, really vouching for the same positions, which, when you're there, you realize like how hard it is to get a Division I job. And, like it's really hard. I mean, there's, let's say there's 30 people there going for that same job, and each of those 30 people have somebody vouching for them, so you're not the only one getting someone to vouch for you. So it's a tough deal.
Yeah, it's a tough deal. It's a exciting thing, I'm sure, for a lot of people. And obviously there's young coaches, like conventions or meets and greets. And like you said, it's tough to get that job. And it's also tough for high school players to get a D1 scholarship. Right. And that was another thing that we ran through talking to coaches at socials and just how much this has changed. So this episode is going to focus on the transfer portal, what it's brought to the recruiting landscape, the pros, the cons, and it's permeated all of college basketball the last 2 years, especially the last 18 months, since the lockdown with COVID. Right. Man, I mean, if you look at the Final Four, you look at a guy like Remy Martin, who played a big role in Kansas's win over North Carolina in Monday's championship game. Like, he came from Arizona State, from the transfer portal. There's much more of that. There's many more guys like that, and it's going to happen again for the recruiting cycle of 222, and obviously for 222, 223, it's going to have a huge effect. So we're going to talk about that. We'll hopefully have a guest later on that's been on the road recruiting trail that been can give us some more insight. What his insight is, will give us our insight. But yeah, let's just jump right into it because we want to knock it out. And obviously everybody's seen the Final Four. Obviously, with Kansas winning the second title under Bill Self, that's even very kind of fitting, or kind of like with all that's going on because of COVID and because this transfer portal. What happened in college basketball? Why did that happen? Because of the NCAA recruiting scandal, and in many regards, it's like a trickle down. So, what school was at the middle of that the most? obviously it's Kansas. It's
Right.
just, and they're being investigated. So you have all these things that are backdrops to the actual game. And we're not going to go over every detail of the game. The game was a good game, a drama-filled game. I don't know how great it was played, but it was a really good game. But let's jump before we jump into the NCAA. Let's jump into the high school talk. Ani, what did you make of Montverde winning GEICO?
Man, they've been so consistent, even with the tough losses like against Duncanville. Montverde has been one of the more consistent teams, other than Sunrise, who took that loss, the Prolific. Yeah. But I thought Montverde has been one of the most consistent teams in the country. They really, use a lot of inside out scoring. Malik Renew, Dylan Mitchell, just all those guys just played their role, and they played it really well. I thought that was the toughest I've seen Link Year have to score. Especially defensively, I thought Montverde did a hell of a job. And in that tournament, I thought they it's funny, like saying Montverde was peaking at the right time because they've been really good, but you can tell they tightened up on some things and just some little things that allowed them to be so good defensively and be able to hold, take guys away from their strengths. I thought Montverde did a hell of a job.
No, they did do a really good job. Derek Whitehead, Duke bound wing guard, wing 40. He played really well down the stretch. He was named the tournament's most valuable player. I think he did pretty good in that McDonald's game as well. Obviously, we both kind of checked that out in our travels a bit as well. Dylan Mitchell, headed for Texas, had 13 points per game, 11.3 rebounds in the 3 games. He had 19 and 8 in the win over Compass Prep in the first round for Montverde. He had 8 points, 13 rebounds in the semifinal, and then he came up big in the final as well. He really had a great tournament. He had, I think, 14. Let me see what he had in the 17 and 12 in the final game. And like you mentioned, Malik Renault inside with that inside-outside game, 14 and 12. And, the game was in the balance. Game was pretty much in anybody's game there. Derek Whitehead didn't have a great shooting game, but he hit a pull-up jump shot with 1:30 to go. Gave Montverde a 55-49 lead. And then KJ Evans hit just this huge three-pointer from the wing with like 37 seconds left, and the game was over. Like you said, they executed. They've been there before. And then you don't want to get in the habit of like, oh, well, this Montverde team's not as good as the one at 220, or this is not a good, like, they have to be judged by the merits of this team and these teams they win against. And I know Prolific didn't have Adam Bona and MJ Rice. So how surprised were you, Ani, that Sunrise went down in the first round? Again, we said it many weeks. This is an open tournament. We talked about that with Steve Smith on the last episode, 123. It's kind of open. But I mean, still, them going down in the first round, what did you take of that?
Yeah, I was actually surprised by that. I know Prolific played some pretty tough teams, but not having a Dembona and not having MJ Rice, I was thinking like, there's no way that, I think Sunrise wins that by at least 15 points. But, I mean, Trey White was really good. He was really good. They just played it collectively. Prolific was just doing a really good job. They took away games like that are tough because when teams like Prolific are close to a team like Sunrise, when you're Sunrise, the pressure is like, we can't lose this game, and I felt like the game got real tight on them. And Prolific, they're just playing loose. They're like, hell, we ain't got nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, what did you think about that game?
I just think because the teams are talented, when you remove two guys like that, if MJ Rice and Trey White, they're not exactly similar, but if MJ Rice made the McDonald's game, I can't sit here and say Trey White didn't want to be a McDonald's All-American when he was a young man and growing up in Texas or living in if you would have said, Ani, he may be a McDonald's All-American in 3 years, that wouldn't have been out of the question. So when a guy like MJ Rice is out of the lineup, he's going to want to take advantage because there's not much difference in the talent level. So now you have another guy that has like more space. Now it's, hey, you got to do something. And he did it. Like, So that's what it seems sometimes with these higher level independent teams. There's a guy ready to step in or step up who's been probably waiting the whole season or like, hey, yo, I'm just as nice. You know what I mean?
Right,
like nobody's thinking inside. Like, so it's very competitive. So that gives a competitive edge to a team, like you said, that has nothing to lose. And Trey White is really good. You know, he's a really good player, and he came up good in that game and in this tournament. So, you know, it still came down to toward the end there. It was a close game, and then you know, 224 Zion Stensley again, another player who hasn't played very much.
Yep.
Steps up, hits that 3-pointer, and they go on to win 59-56. That was pretty surprising. I can't say I thought they were going to shoot like that, but they did really well. You know, and it was a good tournament. Like you said, it was wide open. And then obviously after Montverde wins the tournament, you know, obviously the new rankings come out, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But who were the three, Ani, who were the three most impressive players you saw just from the 8 teams? Obviously, we can give a quick rundown of what happened, but and we did. Link defeated Oak Hill in the first round, 81-67. Then they beat Prolific after Prolific shocked number 1, then number 1 Sunrise. Of course, Montverde, like I said, beat Arizona Compass. Then they beat IMG to avenge their 2 losses to IMG in the regular season. So, which 3 players, Ani, that you thought played really well?
Dylan Mitchell, we talked about him earlier. I just thought just how active he was on the glass, his athleticism. I mean, arguably, he's like the most athletic player in that class. And he just, you know, in his games performing coming up. I mean, what he averaged 13-11, you said?
Yeah.
You know, I thought he was really good. I thought he was fantastic. He was probably arguably one of he's no brainer for me, a top 3 guy performance wise.
Yeah, sure.
From that tournament. Jordan Walsh was fantastic too. I know in the championship game kind of struggled some, but he's such a gamer. You know, people talk about, you know, sometimes Jordan, like in practice, they'd be like, man, they'd be one a little bit more sometimes. Sure. You know, and I know Jordan just, you know, he'd just be like, man, I'm ready for the games. And and when he plays them games, he gets after it. So Jordan, you know, just defensive capability, switchable defender, great in transition, uses his length. You know, I thought Jordan was fantastic. And I would say the third one, I guess I'm a homer because, you know, Trey White was a Texas kid. Well, Oklahoma, then to Texas. Okay. But Trey White, I just loved how he played first game, how he came with it. Just the upset alone, against Sunrise. I mean, I thought he was fantastic. So those are my 3 that just really stood out to me.
Yeah, and obviously Sunrise had to, like you said, the pressure. They're number 1. They're not a slam dunk number 1, but they're number 1 regardless. And if they would have won the tournament, you know, they would rename number 1. And let's talk about any player that you thought helped himself the most. What was there? Was it Zion Stensley, or was there anybody you just thought like, this guy's really helping himself because he's getting some TV time and he's playing well? Yeah,
I thought Zion for sure. Just a kid that's minutes were just kind of up and down, especially throughout the season with Prolific, and then just kind of coming to form and then making big shots and, you know, just kind of showing his versatility on the offensive end. I thought Zion really helped himself out, putting himself in the map because he's a 2024, correct?
Correct.
And I know early on, just kind of, they were like, okay, we're going to ease him in. We're going to see, you know, it's really not about this year. It's more about next year. And so you got to see that, though. Like, you got to see that next year is supposed to be his team, his year.
His year. Correct. And like I said, that's what I said. When you got talented guys, they're going to want to step up. And obviously that was a big win. Obviously Oak Hill didn't play as well as they wanted to. They kind of got off to a slow start. So then they battled back a little bit, but they lost. So Steve Smith, we appreciate him coming on last week on 123, and he's been on before. What a great career he had. Yeah, it's tough. And we put some on the .com, ballseye.com, we put some numbers of stuff he went through. So go check that out when you get a chance. We recapped the GEICO on our .com as well, and the new Fab 50. So a lot of interesting numbers with Steve Smith, just raw numbers of his career. And as we talk about that, let's talk about what happened with the rankings, obviously. So the one thing that Montverde winning really did was make Duncanville look good, who hasn't played in 3 to 4 weeks.
Right.
But, you know, they beat them 67-66 in a game when I was at a game the country saw. Demings hit the 3-pointer basically at the buzzer, gave them that win, and that was kind of propelled them to a great season. But, you know, you can't just mention that game. I mean, like, they had beaten a few ranked teams before that. They had beaten Sierra Canyon when they were ranked high, who's still ranked. They beat Centennial, which handed them their only loss by 5 points. And they beat McKinney in the title game when McKinney was run after McKinney beat Richardson. So in all, they beat 7 teams in the Fab 50. So maybe if Montverde had 1 or 2 losses, they might have been like a compelling reason to put them number 1. If there was an opponent considered a great team, like if there was another great team they like considered they beat, let's say they like Sunrise was undefeated and they beat them in the final, that may have been like, hey, maybe Montverde does deserve, but I don't think there's much question that Duncanville deserved to go up to number 1. I mean, what do you take of them losing to Richardson? Again, that's an overtime loss, 2 points. You know, they were number 1. Richardson climbed back up. Most people thought they would play again. Then Richardson gets knocked off, but they beat the team that beat Richardson handily. So what do you take of that whole mix and then Duncanville going to number 1?
That game, and now you look at it in hindsight, Anthony Black playing in the fourth quarter and all, I don't want to say the theatrics, but, you know, just everything that was going on, you kind of look at it and it's like, okay, what if AB played the whole game? And I think you get a different outcome for sure. Duncanville, I think, especially with Montverde winning it, I agree with you. Like, Duncanville's number 1. If Montverde, I would say this. If Montverde had 1 loss in the season, or let's say 2 losses, who would have been number 1?
Yeah, see, I would have had to go like and really study who does like did they deserve to jump in front of the team they lost to now? Again, because in my rankings, Duncanville never fell behind Montverde because I said this is a strong team. It's evident that, and it's evident watching GEICO that Duncanville could play in that tournament and potentially win it, like or be in the final. There's no doubt. Like, if I would have looked at that tournament and been like, yo, Duncanville can't play these teams, or Richardson can't play these teams, or Centennial can't play these teams, then I would have decided that. But if Montverde had 1 loss and avenged it, they might have been number 1. It probably could have been number 1. Again, I don't want to go into the habit or look and compare this Montverde team to past Montverde teams, even last year. Like, they deserve to be judged on their own accolades for what they did this year. And for what they did this year, they lost to IMD twice. They avenged that, so they beat them 1 of 3, and they split with Sunrise. Now, the split with Sunrise seemed really good before the tournament. Now, like, splitting with Sunrise, Sunrise loses the first round of Prolific. Like, I think it just made all sense for Duncanville, just the way the chips fell for Duncanville to go to number 1. Right. And again, you got to give them credit. Again, give credit to Montverde for scheduling that game. Montverde doesn't really necessarily have to play Duncanville. You know, they could still have a strong schedule without Duncanville, but Duncanville, give them credit, Coach Peavy and his staff, for scheduling that game and scheduling other tough games, right? So it worked all in together. So I think it's a solid choice to have Duncanville number 1. You know, it's the way it worked out. It's just the way the games fell. You know, they know how. I just give credit to Duncanville. They won despite a lot of distractions, like you said, with the AB situation off the court. They obviously won some close games, great defensive team. You know, how impressed were you with this team despite some of the injuries and the off the court issue with Anthony Black? Like, just changing lineups. They obviously were missing a guard against Montverde. Montverde, and they're on their tide, they feel like they have a better team now as well. But Duncanville was missing a guy as well. So what do you think? Just how
you know, in around here, I think people are trying to see when it was all going to fall apart, right? Like, it's just they're so talented, but is this going to come to fruition? And at times, it didn't look like it would. Honestly, just my opinion. That at times you're like, I don't know if this is going to work out. He may be out. You know, CJ Ford was out the whole season basically. But, you know, it really speaks to that team, really speaks to PV and that staff. Yeah. And just those players to be mature enough just to stay together. Correct. Just within everything. You know, around here, I felt like people were. You had half that was rooting for Duncanville, and there was half that were really trying to see him fall. Yeah. And but you know, with all that going on, at what schools do you really see that work out? You know, generally, you know, you see less and it falls apart. So for all that to be going on, and you know, for them to come together and then you know win the state title, and you know end up being number one team in the country, beat Montverde, and I mean, that's impressive. Really just speaks to just kind of like those kids, the staff, PV, you know.
Yeah.
Like we saw what happened to Sierra Canyon. Like,
yeah, it's not always. And to Sierra Canyon's credit, they put it together in other seasons, but this season they couldn't. Right. They were just never gelled. They never got it together. So shout out to those guys. I wanted to kind of mention, you know, that, oh, you know, GEICO, NIBC teams are going to win GEICO all the time. GEICO's going to dominate, always be number one. That's not always the case.
Right.
It's happened more than once. I want to give a shout out to the public schools recently that have won titles and talk a little bit about that. Duncanville's going to finish number one after state champions invitation. Nobody from the state champions invitational is going to leapfrog above those teams, as we talked about. And we know that. And I think our listeners know that. We go back to Chino Hills. 216. That's a public school. They got 3 guys in the NBA. They may have 4 guys in the NBA one day. You know, national champs, 550 national champs. Go back to Yates, Coach Greg Wise, 2010, national champs. You know, I wanted to kind of shout out the Texas national champs because Duncanville is going to finish 550 number one. Then you got the Sugarland Willow Ridge team with Ewing and TJ Ford that finished number 2. Behind Oak Hill, you know, Oak Hill had a really good team. We talked about the team that beat LeBron, and Coach Smith talked about that in last week's episode. So that kind of set up Dallas Lincoln to win the championship the next year. Like, okay, these Texas teams are good. So I wanted to shout out that, you know, Ford and Ewing team that kind of propelled Chris Boss's Dallas Lincoln team to, you know, finish number one after Oak Hill lost with Carmelo. They lost one game, and that's how Lincoln was able to finish number one. Then you go back further. You have Cashmere, who won a title in 1975, Houston Cashmere. And then Wheatley has some powerful teams in 73 and 71. 70 and 73. Obviously, Dwight Jones. They had Batman. They had a guy named Bat flying all over the place. They were an awesome team. Our guy Jimmy Hicks would love to talk about those guys all the time. You know, but the 1973 team was good as well. They had an All-American who went on to UNLV. And they also had the great he was a great defensive player off the bench, I guess, was a great Raiders DB. And his name kind of, the Stickum guy, his name kind of escapes my mind right now. But he's a Hall of Fame DB. But like you can imagine how good a defender on the
he was.
You know, like,
golly.
Lester Hayes. Well, obviously it's Lester Hayes from Wheatley High School, you know. So shout out to all the champs from Texas over the years. There's a little bit more than you think, but obviously wanted to give this credit and talk about that. So Duncanville, number 1. Montverde Academy, number 2. Sunrise can't really fall behind Link because that game we watched, we saw Sunrise beat Link. So even though Link made it to the final, Link stays 4 behind Sunrise because they're head-to-head. I thought about moving Centennial Corona up a little bit. They only lost to Duncanville, but I think Link deserves to stay number 4 because they went to the final. Yeah. Right. Link, you know, was right in the game against Montverde, so they stay 4. IMG stays number 6. Calvary's up to 7. Again, we'll talk about that real quick before we switch gears. Calvary up to 7. Oak Hill stays 8. Can't drop Oak Hill anymore because they beat Roselle Catholic. Roselle's 9. Weddington is undefeated. Again, we don't know exactly how great Weddington is, but they're a North Carolina team. They're undefeated, 31-0. They're 10, and that could change. Obviously, we'll see what happens with the State Champs Invitational. You can watch that beginning on Thursday, and just kind of want to run that down for fans out there that like to watch as much high school. It's at Berkeley Prep in Tampa. Calvary Christian versus Sidwell Friends, number 14. That's a big game on Thursday. I think that's at 3 and 5 or 4 and 6 Eastern. And midday on ESPNU. Then Auburn and Norcross. So just check your ESPN list, but it's on the 7th. In the mid-afternoon, you know, depending on which coast you are, and you can see at least 3 more games of high school basketball, you know?
Right,
so,
right.
You know, we've talked about that before. Let's switch gears and talk about the national championship and what we're going to focus on. And like we said, you know, when if David McCormick, who went to Oak Hill and is Kansas big man, and Jalen Wilson give you 30 points on you, I think you're in a good spot. And if RJ Davis is 5 for 17 and Caleb Love 5 for 24, 1 for 13 from the 3, and you're still in the game, you got to give UNC credit for still being in the game. But I mean, if I told you those stats, what would you think the difference in the margin of victory would be?
I would say Kansas wins by at least 20.
Yeah, I mean,
like easily.
Raw number. Yeah, like, I mean, that was just again, we say basketball is a game of runs, but I think it was even more than that. It was just like, what did you think about Kansas getting hit in the mouth? They looked bewildered. Then North Carolina looked bewildered in the second half. They just
North Carolina just
more physically.
Yeah, North Carolina was just so much more physical than them, and it's just in the pain. Baycott, Mannix was playing. I mean, Mannix was like a damn rim protector in the tournament. But just how hard they were playing, just how physical they were. Or like you said, Love was struggling, but he was still getting to the basket. RJ Davis, Baycott's like getting second, third chance opportunities. Mannix doing his part. Man, I just punched him in the mouth. Like Kansas just looked stunned. Like they're like, whoa, like
they looked bewildered. Like they took an standing 8 count.
Right, but the second half was so different. I mean, Kansas pushed the pace a lot after makes, misses. They pushed the pace a lot, and they really got to the basket. And they matched their physicality. Like I said, McCormick was just huge, inside. Like he won the inside battle.
Oh yeah, and then of course he kind of sealed the game with 2 inside shots. Turnaround over, I think it was Mitch Lightfoot or Matic. It was, and then he scored again. And you think, well, maybe they should have doubled him or fouled him immediately before he took a shot, see if he can make the free throws. There's a million things you can say, and obviously you want to play defense, but yeah, those guys really came up big. I think they each scored 15 points. Ronnie, I got to ask you about this. Like, Puff Johnson gets in there. Second half, he scores 7 straight points. He looks like he could be the hero, and then he panicked or he ran out of gas. He fell crumpled to the floor. He vomited, and then it's like he was just now he's out of it. Now North Carolina looked out of it. Like we said, Kansas looked out of it in the first half. North Carolina was kind of falling apart physically. I just don't know what happened to Puff there. Did you catch any inside? Did you talk?
Yeah, I think so. I think I hit in the stomach.
Okay, he got hit in the stomach,
and that's what happened. But he hasn't been playing those minutes, and so I mean, once he got hit in the stomach, he was just done. I was actually surprised when he was scoring the way he was that they didn't keep going to him. Like I would have just went to him and I'm like shit, you're getting way more than what you could have ever expected from him.
For sure.
But I think I hit in the stomach. I heard that outside he got hit in the stomach and he was just done. And then Baycott hurting, rolling that ankle again. Like you said, UNC, I think physically just, I think they kind of just they depleted. And, with Puff and with Baycott. And I thought some of those other guys were tired. I thought Love was kind of tired. He started missing a lot of shots he normally makes. I think that ankle roll, again, another injury. He rolled his ankle with nobody touching him. And I know Baycott had some problems. He had some problems in the semifinal. He was really banged up. So shout out to Armando. He really gave it his all, but his body was falling apart. I don't think he could have really made a big impact in one more game. If the tournament was 7 games, he wouldn't have been able to Nah.
That was it for him. You know what I mean? So yeah, it just a lot happened there, and it seemed like Puff Johnson like you said, he tied the game on a 3, 57-57, and he got a charge. He forced a charge, and then Remy Martin hit that big 3. And obviously, that's one of the guys we want to talk about because he played really well. I think he hit 5 of 8 threes. But North Carolina still took a lead, 69-65. Manic put back with 1:41 to go, 69-68. They went up, and 6 seconds on the shot clock, and Baycott made a move and he crumbled. That was when it was 69-68. They could have went up 3, and then McCormick makes that inside move to make it 70-69, then 72-69 on his next basket, and then they actually got the ball back to try to tie one more time.
Yeah.
On the step out of bounds, and everybody's just like, what is going on here? And they didn't really get a good shot. They just couldn't get a good look. And then another thing, Manic slips and falls on the design play. So it's just like UNC couldn't catch a break physically.
Right. No, they really couldn't. I want to get your thoughts on this Remy Martin. I know in the Arizona State, went to Kansas. In the beginning, they were talking about how wild, I guess the shot selection, he was kind of forcing things early. I don't know how much really just kind of, but like he really stepped up late. Has that always kind of been the player he's been like?
Yeah,
he's always been like a moment.
Famine. Yeah, he's a little bit of a feast or famine guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get a lot. You may lose. You may want to like wring his neck and pull him out of the game, but then you're like, yes. Sometimes you're like, yeah, we're glad Remy's in there. He's been like that. Like he plays really well in spurts. Like you said, he had a little reputation for maybe being a little out of control at times. And again, we talk about this portal. It seems like Remy Martin was in high school a long time ago. Like
right, it really did. It does. Like
is
he a 2012 kid? Hell,
yeah. Like, he's a sophomore. They won a state title in 2015 Sierra Canyon. Now that was before Bagley came. It was Cody Riley, Remy, Ira Lee, who went on to Arizona. I think he go on to Vanderbilt or I forgot what school. Ira moved on to. But it just seems so long ago. Again, it's a few years before COVID, so which seems like years ago. I mean, like years and years ago. It's obviously is years ago, but it just seems so long. So yeah, that's the mix you get, and they needed them. So it's a play and plug situation for a lot of schools, and we're going to talk about that here in a few minutes. We want to talk about Kansas winning the 4th title, Bill Self is 2nd. Coach K. Boy, North Carolina, I know they lost this game, but they got to feel good by winning that semifinal game. I mean, what did you think? They got to like, yeah, we knocked them out,
Twice. I mean, you got to think about it. They beat him twice. They beat him in his last home game at Duke, and they beat him in the Final Four. Like, take away you didn't win a national championship, which, look, you are a seed. Yeah. I'm not saying they thought they were going to win a national title, but, you weren't supposed to really be there. So the fact that you got to the championship, you beat Duke twice, I mean, there was honestly, what more can you ask? I mean, I won a national championship at Duke, at North Carolina, but I beat Coach Duke in Coach K's last home game, and I beat him in the Final Four. I'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really ask for much more than Hubert Davis did in his first go around. Obviously, he replaced Roy Williams, and Bill Self replaced Roy Williams. Right. Very interesting take there. Obviously, Villanova didn't have much. They didn't have much for Kansas because of the injuries, and that shows you how tough Carolina played. I have my notes because I was watching the game, but when Love rolled his ankle, that was 46-41. And after it was 40-25, I just think he was never the same after he rolled his ankle. The explosiveness was gone. He kind of got it back a little bit, but they missed a lot of layups. They missed a lot. And I think the ankle played a part. They didn't really – I know it did because you could see how much it rolled. And he toughed it out. He's like, hey, don't take me out of the game. And that's the thing. If you roll an ankle and you're not going to be injured and leave the game, stay in the game. Walk it off. Don't. I see with Baycott – I thought, like, I didn't know what was North Carolina's trainers doing at the end of the game against Duke when he got hurt. He went there, sat on the bench, then he got up, then he went to the back, and then he walked back. I was like, and then he went back in the game.
Right. Did he because I thought they were going to take him to a table and check it out. It's literally did he walk back there and he say, screw it, I'm just going to walk. Like, I don't think he sat on any table.
They didn't give him no medical attention, it seemed like, really. They just kind of, are you okay? You didn't have time to do that. So Love did it right. Screw that. I saw him look at the bench. He goes, screw that. Don't take it. I'm just going to walk and tough it out. Because, again, once you sit down, once you think about it, it's going to hurt more.
Right.
Then the trainer comes over. That ain't gonna make you feel any better. You're gonna be like, God dang, So
right.
Yeah, that's a very interesting situation. And like as we said, it was a great weekend for college basketball as it comes to close. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we wanted to mention is you know, this transfer portal, how much it affected the whole tournament. The teams with McCormick is, again, he was at Kansas, but he's an older player. Randy, as we talked about, is an older player. Manick's a transfer. You know, all throughout this tournament, you look back, like the talented, quote unquote, talented teams that are young got knocked out, and the older teams won. So if you're a college coach down there in New Orleans, I mean, what do you think? You're like, I don't want these younger guys. I want a team that's built like Kansas or North Carolina.
Right. I mean, there was a coach that told me, you know, high school guys are going to lose me games. You know, I can't win with high school guys. Okay. And then you look at the NCAA tournament, you just look at those teams, like, oh, it was the teams that didn't win. Like New Mexico State, they're older. You know, they got their best players. Like these guys' best players are 23, 24 years old, 22. Yeah. And that's just what it is. Like, that's why the portal just is so much, you know, I just over there, like obviously I talked about Division I coaches trying to get jobs, but it's also, like I said, the recruiting. I mean, these guys will say, hey, Arnie, what do you know about the portal? Or who you got that, you know, may be transferring? And I'd be like, sheesh, like, you know, and it almost put in perspective, especially with the guests we got coming on, it's like, we still cover the high school players. And I know you got asked the same questions, but it's like, you have to put more focus because we run a scouting service. I mean, college coaches do pay us. Like, you have to put more time into the portal now and seeing what's going on. Like, it's just the landscape has changed. You know, these guys don't think high school kids can help them win.
Correct. And again, unless you're an elite top 25, 50 guy, that's not going to change too much for them.
Right.
But you're right. They want to win games with guys that are experienced college players. One college coach told me that, Ronnie, we know what we're getting from a college player. Now, they want to know a little bit more, and this is where you'll come in, our guests, me, other scouts around the country. They want to know more about the player, his background, what he's like, because they're going to get his stats. It ain't going to be like high school stats or some tournament stats that some girl who's 15 years old is taking as she's making, you know, $10 a game. Like, you're going to get synergy stats, real information on these players of how they play. So how they play is not the problem. They want to know more about what was he like at the other school? What was he like in high school, Ronnie, what was he like in high school? You know, they're going to do their homework, but they want more information. Correct. They don't want information on a 16U game no more or some young player. It doesn't even matter. So, again, if you're a young player out there, you know, be realistic about where you're playing. If you're playing 15 or 16, don't expect a lot of coaches to see you or any at all if you're 15.
Right.
They're going to be watching your game. So make solid choices, play good. You don't have to press for a coach or, I got to get on this team, this loaded 15U team because I'm going to be playing in front of coaches. No, you're not. Maybe one might trickle over just to take a peek, but they got to focus on what, like you said, their jobs and livelihoods are on the lines. They got to focus on what's going to help them.
Right.
I think also I got a lot of work from coaches at one of the socials I went to. Like, we're going to keep a guy back, maybe two. This first live period, which is April 8th through 10th. Ani, did you hear any staff saying that as well? Like, yo, we're going to keep a guy back because we have official visits. We have guys visiting on the portal. So that's a huge difference than a few years ago. Obviously, we're going to have our first April live period in 2 years coming up as you listen to this pod. Later in the week, people are going to be in Vegas. They're going to be in LA. They're going to be various stops. And, you know, everybody's staff of four is not going to be out.
Right.
They're going to be home, and they're going to be evaluating players, and those players are going to be able to run, get a little bit of time with the players they have coming back.
Right.
So everybody's got to figure out who's coming, who's going. And like you said, it's completely changed the landscape. What would you say about that? To kids that on the dead period events that you've seen so far. Obviously, people are going to change teams here in April a little bit. Right. What have you seen so far, and what would be your advice, Ani, about like just finding the right team, trying to stick with it, develop? The development curve is for colleges is only like 1 or 2 years now. They're not worried about keeping a guy for 4 years. Oh, we're going to have him for 4 years. So that affects the development curve of travel ball and recruiting. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I haven't seen as much movement as far as like guys on summer teams.
Okay.
That I have in the past. Obviously, April live periods, but it's a really more of a telling. The past few years, we haven't had an April live period really, so this will be different. But my advice really just for them is like you need to go somewhere where you're going to play, you're going to develop and get better. Especially for these young guys, like don't get caught up so much on these rankings and get caught up on like, okay, maybe if I get with this team, they know this coach and this coach will come in and offer my son, which will help with whatever. I kind of call that you're trying to trick the game. And you can trick it only for so long till the reality is either you're good enough or you're not. But I just think development is so key. Like you said, like these guys want older guys. So you have to be that much better as a high school player. So be in situations where you're going to be that much better, where you can be that much better, right? Even like these unsigned seniors, like I'm helping the unsigned senior team out. And one of the main things, like I had to tell them, I was like, man, what do you think about junior college? And I said, look, I get it. Your goal is Division I. That could happen at April. It could possibly, you really perform, the right coaches there that need somebody that may be looking for a high school kid or two, and your son performs is there, right? But I even told them, look, like, even if a Division I comes in, if you're a 22, like, you have to understand you may be the kid that they got because they didn't get what they wanted. Sure. So you may want to just need to go junior college, be there for another year or two, then transfer, right? Because now you're more at peace. Now you're 20 years old, going on 21. Like, but
more seasoned player,
right. And I think that just these guys high school guys need to worry more about development and being in situations where it's a good quality coach. You play saw the good events. There's a lot of events. Hell, there was one weekend you talking about there was 4 events in Southern California. Like
the events are not the problem. Finding the location is not the problem. It's being at the right location where there could be some coaches, communicating with anybody who's been contacting you. Hey, I'm going to play on this team. I'm going to be here. Good communication is vital. A college coach ain't got time for a kid who's not communicating clearly.
Right.
Like no way, not right now. It's so you're right about that. I think your point about development is spot on. You got to get better where, again, get some advice for some people from the high school side, your travel ball side, other people that have your vested interest, and be realistic. Like you said, this marriage of unrealistic goals for high school players and colleges saying we need college players because we need to win with college players. That's the mantra. We need, unless you're a McDonald's All-American type, we need to win with college players. That's how we're going to win. That's what we're going to put our livelihood on. That marriage or that thing's going to collide this spring and summer, Ani. Parents are key. I don't know how many parents have told me, well, we're going to wait for something a little bit better. We're going to see what's out there. Wait. If you're not a top 200 guy and a solid scholarship offer comes, it's a legitimate one, and like you should really take it if it's really out there. Even for 223, I would advise that. Maybe it'll get back a little normal to 224 when these COVID players are finally done with their eligibility. Like maybe Remy and Cody Riley are gonna like have another season of eligibility. Like it's just crazy how many older players there are in college. Like the average 17 or 18-year-old kid is not beating a 23-year-old transfer portal guy in a college practice. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. So we're going to talk about that more with our guest, Brandon Jenkins of 247 Sports, National Recruiting Analyst. We're going to bring him on now to kind of talk about what we've just been talking about. Brandon, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yeah, let me get this camera centered. There we go.
Oh, yeah, Jenkins.
Man, I'm trying to match it.
Got you, Brandon. Appreciate you jumping on.
There
you go. A little bit that
way.
There
you go.
Dang, been one of them days.
Appreciate you jumping on, Brandon. Thank you for joining our podcast. We want to talk a little bit about the changing landscape of college recruiting as it relates to high school players and the portal obviously being a big factor for colleges. So just want to jump right in it and want to kind of get your take, because at the NCAA Final Four, me and Ani were there. The talk seemed to center around the portal and what to make of it. What's your hot take on that and how much it's changed in the last 18 months?
With the portal's effect on recruiting?
Yes.
I would say I mean, honestly, kids just don't have the opportunity to wait for the Division I scholarships that they think that they can get. You know, I think we've done a great job as a media community, like, of informing these kids, just to let them know that, you know, the opportunities that were out there probably in the 2015, 2016 aren't there in the 2022. But it's just on them to listen, to be honest. You know, a lot of kids, you see a lot of kids big time in schools, and, like, at the end of the day, it might be the prime opportunity for you to get your school paid for, and that's what it's all about. So it kind of goes back to what you said. I mean, I look at it at the same way as an academic perspective. When you transfer from schools, the first thing that, you know, admissions is going to look at is your grades. When you see this transfer portal, they see dudes at the low major level that are proven with production. And, you know, when you're taking a kid from high school, you don't know what you're getting out of that. They look at you as a project. So that's how kids need to look at it. They're more ready. They're better than you, more physical than you, more skilled than you. They know the speed of the game. They've been through it. You haven't. And they're going to lean in that direction. So any opportunity that you get, you need to look at it as a blessing and they take advantage of it.
Yeah.
I know, 100%. You know, you at 24/7, you cover a lot. You're in the Midwest. You're in Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
And just talk about, like, you know, I seen you put out some stuff about some kids transferring. Has there been a change in kind of how you had to cover basketball and just recruiting now, more geared towards the transfer portal, or is there more of a balance?
No, it's been a big change. I think one thing that we realized as a company is how much buzz the transfer portal generates. Our views go up, our amount of subscribers go up, because they want to know who's joining their team at the end of the day, and they want the scoop at the end of the day. It's just more opportunities for scoop. You see a lot of these transfers racking up the calls from colleges, and we need to be on top of that. Because they want to know what level of caliber kid that they're getting. They want to see who they're getting recruited by, to see if their team wins out, like, what type of kid are we getting? So it just all generates a lot of buzz, because at the end of the day, whether it's the transfer portal or whether it's a 5-star prospect, recruiting is recruiting, and it generates a lot of buzz.
Right. Correct. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So now I'm gonna ask this question: will 24/7 ever do? Because obviously you have a recruiting class with the high school guys, or ranking. Will y'all have, like, a transfer portal recruiting class ranking?
I feel like it would be something that's in the works. I do not know for sure. But, you know, we're definitely gearing it in that direction. We currently added a star system to our transfer database. So we're just working on that. We're taking it stride by stride. And Travis Branham is doing an excellent job of, you know, staying in the work, staying on top of that. So, yeah, we'll just see how it is moving forward. It just depends on how our subscribers relate to it and what we can do with it long term.
Yeah. That's very interesting. That's changing. You know, recruiting hasn't changed that much since 247 came along in 211, Rivals a few years earlier, Scout, and which obviously is now part of 247 or bought out, and even ESPN in 2007. Like, the landscape of the recruiting hasn't changed that much. You know, the top guys go to the schools they want. You know, 50 to 175 have good offers. 200 to 500's got to find the right mid-major, and then the rest fill in. Like, this is totally changed now. Like you said. That's a good point you made. I didn't know really. Like, the fans just care which players they get. They don't care if they come from another college, from another planet. It's like, who are we getting that's really good? So that's a good point, Brandon. That's a good point for our listeners to know. And back to you know, the anticipation of the live period. Have you noticed any changes in the recruiting of the kids you talk outside now? Obviously, the very elites, the guys who are going to be McDonald's All-Americans in 23, they're getting recruited the same as they were there. But have you noticed, like, when kids talk about their offers or who's calling them, are they getting the truth? Are they getting, like, are they just being overly optimistic? Because from your end, you being experienced, you're like, wait a minute, I don't know if this kid's going to get recruited at that level at the end of the day. You know, have you seen any difference so far going into this first live period?
I think I see it from both sides. Some of them know what's going on, and they're very, very upfront about it. You know, they don't mind telling me what's real. But some of these kids, they just don't know. Like, they just don't know. Like, the offer that they had probably their freshman year probably expired, and they just don't know. They're still thinking that they're getting recruited. I mean, and we've seen that in years past. I'll tell you one thing. I think the biggest difference is, you know, just the talent level. What COVID has did, how it's affected the talent level, especially in the classes of 23 and 24, and how, you know, in some cases it probably doesn't match, you know, the level of where they're getting recruited, just because of, like, how the distribution is. You know, you're seeing kind of guys that you're used to seeing as like mid-major guys kind of entertain a high major recruitment. And I think it all goes back to that transfer portal.
Sure.
And I think it's just a whole, in the world of recruiting, it's just a level of uncertainty just because of what has happened due to the NCAA changing the transfer rule and due to COVID. So, we're just seeing a lot of unusual things. And I think the live period will get things back to normal when coaches get a chance to see these kids for, a couple of weeks and get a chance to get a feel for who they are as prospects and which way they want to lean, whether it be portal or high school.
Do you think you spoke about that? So we'll have about 4 or 5 weeks in the live period. Do you think how the coaches think right now? Because you made a good point. They'll get a couple weeks to see them, but seeing how these coaches think of going older, do you think seeing high school kids more is going to help, where they may try to nitpick more, or do you think it's just like going to expose them, like, okay, like warm them up to the idea?
Definitely there'll be some nitpicking, because at the end of the day, these coaches want to get their evals perfectly correct so they can, maintain their job and make sure that the program is winning. But also, I think it'll provide an opportunity for them to realize, like, this is a kid that we could bring into our program and groom. Now, here's the problem. The transfer portal, it all goes back to the transfer portal, because will that kid have the mentality like, hey, can I buy in for 2? Maybe I won't play the first 2 years. Can I buy into that? And, for some of these kids, that's an opportunity that they probably should take, being able to go to a school, buy in, and then be the best player they can be for their final seasons of college basketball. But, you just don't know, because it plays with the college coach's mental if a kid is going to stick or not. So, like I said, it's a level of uncertainty. So you kind of can factor in both, Ronnie.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Brandon, talking to coaches recently is leading up to the after the Final Four and where they get gear up for this weekend. Some have verified to us that at least one staff member, maybe even 2, is going to stay back on campus for portal visits. What are you hearing about that? How do you think that's going to affect strategy of where they go? Obviously, they're not going to focus much on 15 or 16U at all, as maybe if they were a little bit before. How do you think that's going to affect this overall strategy for these colleges, especially for the non-blue bloods or the guys who are not just getting whoever they want?
Only you have to have a specific type of budget to focus on those 15s and 16Us. But nah, it's smart. It's smart because at the end of the day, you got to get those players. You got to get those players committed. You got to get the job done. So yeah. And I think it's a big plus because kids tend to vibe with assistant coaches more than the head coaches. You see that on a recruiting. That's the recruiting standard. You see that from time to time. When you ask a kid who's mainly recruiting them, you hear the assistant coach, they have that relationship with that. So I think it's very important for them to stay there. Honestly, that's just news to me, but it's something that you have to do. People want to get older and to the point where they can get kids to buy into their system. So, it's a plus. It's a plus. And I think as an assistant coach, which better way would you have it? Would you rather travel and go evaluate kids throughout the day, or would you rather take care of 2 or 3 official visits and endorse your school and try to get something done on the dot? So it's an advantage, and I think it's well worth it.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right on that. Let's talk a little bit about the pressure. Like you said, there's a little bit less emphasis on recruiting deeper into the high school pool of good players. Do you feel that that's even created more pressure on the parents and the club coaches to find the right fits? And then do you think that the parents are getting the message like, yo, you got to be realistic? Like you said, Ani said before you came on, sometimes some of these guys are going to have to look at junior college, NAIA. Do you feel that? I know the media is getting the message out there, as you said when you first came on, but do you think the parents are actually taking it in and understanding it?
I will tell you the parents are not doing that. I can't speak for all parents. It's bad.
You ain't lying. You ain't lying. You ain't lying at all.
That been through it.
Yeah.
But man, these parents, man, we try as media. Correct. We try because at the end of the day, I don't think any media member wants to see a kid do bad.
Correct.
But yes, it does create a lot of pressure. You have to find an AAU program that will put you in the right position to succeed and that will endorse you to do such. And, for the kid itself, the thing that I think about is their mental when it comes to, especially the fringe low major kid, maybe even the fringe D2 kid who's trying to get a scholarship, just trying to get a scholarship. You have to be on your P's and Q's, making open shots, guarding the ball. If you're a big rebound, there's no room for error. There's no room for error. And it's just on them to make sure that their mind is right. And it's on the parents to, you know, have a clear scope of, hey, like, you know, this is the chance. And if we don't get this, it's all about perseverance. But like, you know, nobody wants to, in this day and age, nobody wants to accept responsibility. And that's the thing. Yeah. And so, you know, and we know that, but we still try. All you can do is just still try to give them, you know, the nuggets that they need just to be successful. But no, like, yeah, it puts a lot of pressure on the kids. And, you know, most of these parents don't listen. So, I mean, it's a tricky situation, but, you know, at the end of the day, things will work itself out and they'll hit reality at some point.
Yeah. And that makes a good point. They got to hit reality as soon as possible, especially with what's going on. You hope that happens sooner than later. Like you said, I think it's still going to happen late for some people. You know, do you think like at a lower level, Brandon, like low major, you can't really hide a really good player anymore. Like, man, we got a good player because he's going to have a good freshman year, maybe be conference freshman of the year or all conference. Well, he's going to be in the portal.
Absolutely.
So do you think that it makes sense for a college, a lower level? And I asked different coaches this weekend and they had different opinions that say, hey, Brandon, we don't mind having you in our program. We think you're a hell of a steal at where you're ranked or where you're at. We'll help you leave to a Power 5 school, but we want you to do well for a year or two here. And we know we might lose you. Do you think that's a realistic thing for low majors in the future? Or do you think that's a bad recruiting strategy?
I mean, it's so crazy that you mentioned it because I was starting to say when that transfer rule dropped, I was telling everybody around me, I mean, man, low majors D2s, they're going to start turning into JUCOs. Hey, man, I can get you to do this and I can send you up there. Like,
correct.
It's nuts. I guess it just
one.
depends on who you are. If you're the head coach, I wouldn't recruit like that. You know, your main goal is to focus on winning and not short-term production. If you're an assistant coach looking to get a bump up, I mean, like I got so here. Like, I got that eye. I know what I can do, and it translates to the high major level. So it just depends on who you are. But you know, at the end of the day, looking back at everything that has taken place over the past couple of years, you know, I can see why the NCAA had that rule in place. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be because kids deserve the freedom to go wherever they are. But you know, just as fat as the portal is getting, I mean, it makes me wonder if we're going away from, you know, teaching kids how to persevere. Because when you get into the real world, you can't transfer jobs. You know what I mean? Like somebody needs to pay that light bill. So, you know, that's just my biggest scare. But you know, it just depends on who you are in terms of from a coaching perspective.
Yeah, no, it's Ryan. That was a great question. I have a comment on that. Like, I know mid majors that are doing that right now. Like they're saying, hey, you know, man, just come over here. I know we're above your level, but just do this for you. You'll go high major instead of going there, maybe not playing. But you know, and I'm not gonna say the school, but the kid that they told that to went to a high major. Now he's in the portal, and now he's going to go to mid major. So in reality, he was going to put numbers in that school. Like it was no doubt about it. But they said, man, just do a year and you'll transfer up. And honestly, like Brandon said, it's hard because when you tell a kid that, now in his mind, obviously the kids have their own agendas and their own goals, but everything you try to do within the team, you know, make sure the team goals are fulfilled. But once you tell the kid do 1 year and then transfer up, like me, especially when I was 20 years old or 19, like, bro, I don't care. Like, I'm looking at the stat sheet every day. Like, you know, I'm not caring about the wins and losses because I know, because in my mind, I'm only here for a year.
Exactly. And I think the thing that the key point to that I took away was the kid's mindset. And it just makes me wonder how often, like, do us as like media guys, as people in the scouting room who talk to college coaches and who endorse these kids, how often we think about like the mindset of our actions and how it affects a kid, or the mindset that a coach has on a kid. You know, I talk about this all the time. You know, with rankings, with national rankings, it's all like a lot of it is about projecting. You know, we're projecting kids and we see these kids with a lot of upside, the length, the size, and everything like that. And we give them a ranking. But in their mind, they think, oh man, I was productive enough to achieve this ranking. What I'm doing is right. Maybe I'm good. I don't have to get better. You know, so I mean, like it's a tricky game. It is a tricky game in all areas.
Yeah. it's definitely gotten more tricky, like you said, in the last 18 months or since COVID. You know, coaches, Brandon, regardless, if they're not in on a player, like if they don't know a little something about the player, have some kind of relationship with the AU coach or the parent, they're not going to get them on the bounce back. So they're still going to have to recruit high school players, even though they're not offering them scholarships maybe or bringing them in, because they're going to feel like we're going to get 30 or 40% of our roster from bounce back. So
absolutely,
and there's very little chance of them getting in the portal if they don't have some kind of relationship. So how do you think the portal is going to affect that industry and affect like what college coaches are kind of reaching out to you and other guys at 247 and other media guys? Like, do you think it's going to change, or they were still going to want to know, like, go by the rankings, go by, their projections, or is that going to be totally out the door and things are going to change?
Oh, no, it's definitely not going to be out the door because it kind of ties back to how you loaded up that question. These coaches are recruiting for the bounce back.
Correct.
Because at the end of the day, you can't go into the portal and recruit somebody who, and at the end of the day, we all know there's a plug to each player. Each player has a plug. Who do I have to go through to get to this kid? You can't go try to recruit a kid all blindly and restart a new relationship, because by that time it's already too late. Like that kid in his mind knows who he had relationships with prior, and he's going to value those. And like as soon as they reach out, they'll probably be done. So you're going to see a lot of schools recruiting talented kids for the bounce back. And y'all two probably already seen it. So I mean, I just think that your question just ties into the back because coaches don't want to be late. So yes, rankings will still play a huge factor.
Correct. Yeah. The regular stuff we seen prior will still play a huge factor.
Right.
Yeah. And they just, to me, it seems like they need to recruit more players because they're going to have to get them on the bounce back.
Right.
It's just like you're sliding in the DMs. Just keep sliding, keep shooting your shot. You know what I mean?
You're going to have to keep, like you said, keep shooting your shot because you don't know where they're going to end up in a year or two. It's definitely changed a lot. So go ahead, Ronnie.
No, it's just, but what's also interesting, it's more of a comments / questions like, Brandon, what do you take of these teams that have lost? Obviously, LSU with Will Wade being out, they have like 11 guys that are gone. But like, there's programs that are got to replace like 6, 7, 8 dudes. What's your take on that? I know a lot go heavy on portal, but those portal kids, because we had Justin Young on the show from Hoop Scene, and he talked about how he felt that portal kids are more stopgaps. Not all of them, but like more like they're not the solution, right? So like in a situation where you have 6, 7, 8 scholarships in the situation, what's your take on that? And do you think, okay, in a situation like that, they need to take more portal kids, or what's your thoughts?
My thing with that, so he called it stopgaps.
Yeah, like that. They're not like basically.
Go ahead. I don't want me to.
No, go ahead.
I think he's saying like because they have synergy and they have good stats, unlike some high school stuff that's could be a little not true or a little not as good relative. He's saying if the guy averaged 4 points at Weber State, he's going to average close to that at the next school because it's a little bit more like concrete, like that's who he is. Right. So that's what we're saying, like it's going to feel a little role. Like you're not going to get a player who's averaging 4 points at Weber State who's going to average 18 at Texas just because you got him out of the portal. That's kind of what he was referring to.
That makes sense. Well, I think the way that I look at it is, especially with schools looking to fill roster spots due to coaching changes, LSU is in a lucky situation because they're LSU. I mean, who wouldn't want to go to LSU? But like, let's just make it like a normal school. I don't even know who's Butler. Probably Butler might have an overhaul. But when you think of situations like that, it's not just about hitting the portal to find guys, even though you need to fill that role. If I'm a coach, I'm hitting it with the agenda of finding guys in the portal who have years of eligibility where they can learn how to buy into a system. And then I'm also hitting the high school scene to get guys who fit what we want to do, and then combining both. And that's when you have like your initial year, you probably struggle, but then you keep building because you can only go up. So you're only building upon success and success. Everybody hits the portal to get older, but I think it's all about getting older within the same concept of system. So when y'all gain comfort with each other, it leads to wins. So I think that's the way that coaches need to approach it in that situation. But then again, like desperate times seek for desperate measures. And if you need to fill a roster, man, just get as many people as you can. So it's just timing and situations. But like for that, like just a generic situation, what I would do and how I would handle it if I was a coach, it's just all about buying into your system and getting players who are willing to do that.
Gotcha. Well, Brandon, we appreciate your insight.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you coming on, and yeah, you made some great points, and we're sure we'll see you on the trail. But yeah, we appreciate that, and it's going to be a crazy spring. Obviously, the first spring in a couple years. I know where you're going to be at. Let people know where you're going to be at so they can follow your content. Where you're going to be at 8th through the 10th, and then the 22nd to the 24th.
Correct.
Yeah, for the 8th through the 10th, I'll be in Indianapolis covering the Under Armour Association. So look forward to recruiting updates and event recaps from there. And then 2 weeks later, I'm covering the high and mighty Nike UIBL to get a look at a lot of the top basketball players in the country. So event updates, recaps from that as well. And you can all follow it at bjenkins247 on Twitter.
Appreciate it. All right, Brandon. Appreciate you jumping on. Thanks for your time.
Brandon. Appreciate y'all.
Take care. So yeah, Brandon's going to be, I guess, in Indy 2 straight weeks. 1 week and then going back off and then going back. So yeah, man, he made some good points about just you're getting a player from the portal. He's older. He's a little more set in his ways than I think a 17 or 18-year-old. Like he's going to have to buy into your team. Right. Or else you're just going to have a bunch of guys with a bunch of agendas that are okay. Now you got seasoned guys, but they all got their agendas. That's the right. thing. I'm a little would be concerned if I had to fill 6 spots, 7 spots from the portal. That's one thing I do like about the high school players. You can mold them a little more. Again, some people would say bullshit them a little more, but you mold them a little bit more.
Right.
And if they fit, if they can play, if they can play, they'll help you. So. Yeah, I mean that's a lot to untangle, and we still have a little bit more to talk about that. I think I think the one main thing I got from our conversation between me and you and between us three is behavior and background are more important than ever.
Right. I
think you don't have time as a high school player to goof around. Why? I can get a college player that is better than you, and he's a goof off. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be some players with respectable or shady characters in the portal. Well, they're in high school. There's some in high school. So they're going to ask more about that. I think they have been asking me and other scouts more about that. What do you know about this player, especially what was he like in high school? Because that's what a college coach has asked me, Ani, is like, what was he like in high school? Even they're getting him out of the portal, they still want to know that background. Do you get that a little bit too? Hey, what happened there? Why did he go here? What? Do you get that as well?
Yeah, I've been getting that a decent amount. It's like, hey, so tell me about the kid. Is he a worker or, is there any character issues or, along the line of that? I was like, what motivates him? Or, can he buy in? A lot of that is like, Brandon was talking about, like you said, like, will he be able to buy in to what they do? And a lot of that, that's really where the questions stem from. Because like you said, they have synergy. They'll ask how good we think they are, but they kind of have a general idea because they can watch about hundreds of clips on synergy, right?
It's way different than high school. And again, high school, some prospects and some organizations do have good video scouting, applications, and others don't have anything. So, don't have anything very good, but it's way different with a guy in the portal. They know his stats backwards and forwards. They know what he's like in situations.
Right.
They know what he's like in a half court. They know what he's like on right side of the court, left side of the court. They got it broken down from synergy and other things like that. So, like you said, they're more asking about his background, what he was like, and things of that nature. So that's going to keep happening. And obviously, they're going to do their own diligence. So that's going to be important. Ani, I think getting solid advice about choosing the travel team, as we talked about with Brandon, is good. What do you like about the college? Why are you going to that school? How did you break that down? How did you break the 5 or 6 schools you really look like? You can't play with all these schools. I know we like the Instagram posts. I would shout out to my guy Tipton Edits. People love the top 10, the top 5, but you're gonna have to be more serious about it going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And even when guys post like a top 10, these coaches look at them a little crazy now. Like, not all of them, obviously, like the top 25 guys, they can do whatever the hell.
They can do whatever they want. Yeah.
But if you're like a 150 or 100 up and you have like your top 10, like, just it doesn't you're not helping yourself.
No.
And honestly, what I've noticed is that these kids that put out a top 5, if another kid that has the same scholarship as you sees that you have that school in top 5, they may take that school before you do. Like if you have SMU, Tech, Baylor as your top 3, like let's say you post that. Yeah. And then a kid, he wants to go to SMU, right? Well, before you figure out you want to go to SMU, that kid commits, so you don't take that. So you don't, but he hasn't put out his. So sometimes even putting out your top schools may hurt you.
Yeah, especially if you have a wide net and you're just doing it for Instagram. If you're doing it for the attention, like if you have a serious top 4 or 3, like narrow it down. Communicate, tell the coaches thank you. Hey, I'm going this way. I'm down to these schools, because you're right. It's the competition is tougher than ever. People don't want to waste time. If you have a legitimate offer, and like you said, you and Brandon said, if you're not in the 150, you better take it.
Yes.
If you're not a top guy, you better take it. I do want to say something a little different too. I'm going to go on a little rant because I want
Ronnie rant.
Yeah, because these top 25 guys, yes, if you have a profile, well, let's say it's an Instagram or Twitter, do put your information on there. Do put your proper name, your proper spelling. I like the ISO Ronnie, but like if you were getting recruited, I want to see your real name,
Absolutely.
But if you're a top 25, quit telling these top 50 guys that they have to do all this. Like, quit saying that. Like, if you're a McDonald, like your problems obviously can be, greater than your ability. But like you said, I just sometimes I think, and Brandon made a good point. Again, Brandon's a younger guy, so it's a good perspective to get. Obviously, we talk to different people on this podcast, but like we forget, Ani, sometimes that we were 17 years old. So it's hard to listen or do it exactly right. Like there's information out there. There's a lot of people that can give you good information.
Right.
But sometimes I think as media members, we forget that like we were 17 one time too. We do goofy things. So if you're in the top 25, enjoy it, get better, and do what the hell you want on Twitter. And enjoy yourself. Enjoy your life a little bit. Right. I think you said if you're not getting recruited, if you're not in the top 200, you want to be a little bit more on the straight and narrow, because your options are limited going forward. I just hate to say, you're not being talked about as much as you were 5 years ago.
For sure. No, absolutely. Like you said, like top 25 guys, they can be more loose on social media. Now, you don't want to just be nuts, but they can be more loose. I mean, they can, and those top 25 guys, it's good for them to be loose because there's a lot of pressure on them anyways. Like, talking to guys like Keontae George and Case, and like I've asked them, like, what do you do to get away from like all this? Because it's every day. It's like a text. I mean, from multiple, it could be from agents, from this and that, people, family members that come out the blue,
Sure.
So giving them some type of avenue for them to escape a little bit and have some fun, I think is much needed.
Correct. For the top 25, top 50, because they're getting hit up on goofy NIL deals.
Right.
Go to this school for this. Yeah, they need an outlet. So I just think as a media member, sometimes we forget we were 17. Ani, if everything me and my buddies did at 17 and 18 were all on plastered on IG Live, we'd look just as dumb as or silly as they are telling them all this stuff. Same thing with some of the people older than me, especially my age and older. Like, there's a lot of wild shit we was going on back before cell phones were good. Like, we didn't even have a cell phone. So again, we don't want to put down kid. We're just here to tell them to be realistic, enjoy themselves,
right?
Be serious about which college you want to go to. Do your homework on which college you want to go to. And I'll make a few more points, and as we're going to wrap up because we want to keep it tight. We still have to mention a few things, but there's going to be turnover. So what you do to value most, and don't expect to project what the team's going to be like from 3 years. What do you value the most in the college and that staff that you're looking at and the roster? You can't project what a college roster is going to be like 3 years from now no more.
Right.
That's another disadvantage you have as an incoming player. You don't know what that college's roster is going to look like in 2 to 3 years, especially 3 years out. And you have 4 years of eligibility. You don't. So you're gonna have to be, I guess, I call it a good selfish. Look out for yourself, but also communicate honestly. Do your homework on the college. And this is one point before we could talk about the portal for hours and hours. I mean, we really can. But here's what I want every parent and everybody listening to this pod to get is get advice from someone who won't benefit if you make it. If you make it to the NBA and make a lot of money, they won't benefit. And also get advice from somebody who won't be hurt if you don't. You got to remember, if you get advice from somebody who has some vested interest in you, he's going to, and it affects his or her life if you make it or don't, they're not giving you non-emotional advice.
Right.
Correct? So, like, let's say you mentioned Cason Wallace and Keontae George. I'll be honest right here on this pod. Doesn't matter if they make it if they make it for me or if they don't. It's not going to affect my livelihood, my wallet. So that's why I would be honest with them if they ever ask me things, right? And same thing is on the flip side. If they make it, I won't benefit, and I won't be hurt if they don't. You know what I mean? So get advice once in a while from those type of people that have been in the industry or have been in basketball that can give you just some square, solid advice that is not emotionally invested either way, whether you make it or not.
Right. No, 100%. That's a great point. Like the people that don't have any vested interest in the situation, I mean, they're going to give you the most truer of advice, most unfiltered, because at the end of the day, like your money's going to be the same regardless. And that's a hell of a point. You know?
I try to say that as much as I can when I speak sometimes, like at camps or a Pangos camp or something. Like, you need to find somebody that you trust that doesn't benefit if you make it and doesn't get hurt if you don't. Right. That their life is the same. Because your parents are great and they're your number one resource. They know you the best, but they got some emotional tie to that. And as Brandon said, they don't listen. They're not listening. They're so emotionally tied to you. They believe the best in you. But well, of course they should believe in the best in you because they brought you on this earth and they can take you out if they
exactly.
You know, they're the ones who can correct you with the most authority. So, you know, that it's a tough situation and it's exciting and it's great, but it's just the landscape and the reality of it has changed. You know, there's no doubt about it. So as we switch gears here, did you want to make any last point on the portal and kind of already offer some advice to the listeners? Ani, I know we've gone over a lot of points and you know, we'll keep talking about this as the spring and summer go along and see what transpires. Obviously, we're going to talk about good players, but we're going to talk about the landscape too.
Yeah, no, I mean, kind of similar to what you said, but just guys, just in what we talked about, just look at the legitimate offers that you guys, that, you know, these 22s, these 23s that y'all have. And, you know, you're going to have to make quicker decisions. And, you know, you got to love who loves you.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you're chasing something. It's like, you know, I'm not going to go try to get a girl or a woman that doesn't like me, that doesn't want me there. Or at some point she's like, all right, I'll take you out on a date because I'm just tired of you, you know.
Tired of you hitting her up.
Yeah. But it's like there's no value. I don't think there's real good value in that. And same thing with just players. I mean, just go love who loves you. Yeah. Because that's going to help your career down the road more so than just, you know, trying to chase something that doesn't want you.
Chase some level or some school that doesn't really want you. So, yeah, that's a great point. Be realistic. So I wanted to give a shout out to our girl, Chelsea.
Yes.
Chelsea comes on as a guest host. You know, obviously, she's one of our hosts once in a while. She was right on the money with she last week. She predicted South Carolina and Don State to win the title, and they did. You know, they won the title. I believe that was on Sunday night.
Yeah. And
they 64-49 over UConn. I kind of knew this, but I didn't really know this off the bat. Ani, like, I know Gino Armani had won 11 titles. I really didn't know he was 11-0 in title games. Like,
oh, wow.
He was 11-0 in title games.
Wow.
So, like, maybe I should, if I ever go gamble, maybe I should tell Chelsea to lay it down for me, you know, lay down my bet. Because
right, because she was spot on.
She was spot on. So, you know, they won the title. Don Staley's now 2-0. They won in 2017 after UConn had won. I believe that was 4 straight. You know, so they let her. I think they went wire to wire. Number 1, South Carolina, Leah Boston, the junior, National Player of the Year, 30th double-double of the season, 11.16 rebounds. She was the MOP of the Final Four. We didn't really talk much about Kansas's players. Why don't you tell me who were the Kansas MOP? And, you know, we didn't really shout out Kansas. We talked a little bit about.
Oh yeah, they got the Ocha Abaji, didn't they?
Yeah, he was the MOP. We didn't say too much to him, but I mean, he really had a great tournament and a great season. Yeah,
I mean, he's shooting like over 40% from 3 this season. I mean, he's made one of the biggest leaps as a player. You know, from the year before to now. Ocha has just been fantastic, and you know, he's going to probably be a first-round draft pick. You know, just really shoots it, really took much of a lead. I remember his freshman year, just seeing him now. I'm talking about guys that high school guys you take in that commit to the culture and the team identity, and you know, seeing a guy like him just had a fantastic tournament, led them. I know the North Carolina game was a little goofy. You know, I know he was just really trying to find his points, but I thought he tried to impact the game in other ways. I think he's had fantastic tournament, fantastic season.
Yeah. Shout out to him for winning MOP. Shout out to Don Staley. Shout out to our girl Chelsea. Shout out to Brandon Jenkins for coming on the pod and you know, making this another episode. I mean, you know, we really appreciate people listening to this episode. It's a very important episode again, as we're gonna have a spring live period for the first time in 2 years, and it's coming up fast. We still have one more week of high school basketball, then Duncanville will be officially the Fat 50 national champs for 21-22 as we kind of wrap up 21-22. Wanted to mention, you know, like I said, go to ballslife.com, check out the rankings, check out our latest stuff, check out our other podcasts. Kicks of Your Life with Jordan McLaughlin. Noble and Rouge continues to bring in the great guests. Unapologetic is ramping it back up with our girl Kia Stokes. Buckets and Breakdowns always has a unique and nice view of things. So check those out on the Ball of Life Podcast Network. Again, thanks for listening in. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching on YouTube. Ani, anything else out there, man? You know, anything else to say before we hit the road and hit the recruiting trail this spring?
Nah, nothing, man. Just shout out to our supporters. Keep supporting. Let's, you know, we doing a great job over here. We gonna keep building it. But man, shout out to our supporters. Shout out to our guests. You know. You know, that's all I gotta say. You know, we're gonna start ripping and running during the our weekend's gonna be crazy, but you know, it's what we do.
Yeah, exactly. So again, thanks for tuning in to episode 124 of In the Paint Show. But for all those people we mentioned, thank you. And to all our listeners, thank you once again. But for now, me and Ronnie, and I said me and Ronnie, me and Ronnie, take care. Bye.